So Aizen and Madara are like the main respective villains that people think of when they think about Bleach and when they think about Naruto. Yet usually when they put them in a versus match either together or against the opposing series, it's like Madara versus the Espada and Aizen versus the Akatsuki, but why not actually have them fight the groups that they actually soloed? So instead of Aizen versus the Gote 13, I'm going to be doing Madara versus the Gote 13. And instead of doing Madara versus the 5 Kage, we're going to have Aizen fight the 5 Kage and see how both would handle fighting these respective groups that the other was able to bring down by themselves. And then maybe, just maybe, if you're all good boys and girls, maybe you'll just get that Aizen versus Madara video that I've had a lot of people ask me to do. So with that being said, if you enjoy these versus videos, if you enjoy power scaling type content, make sure you leave a like on this video and you subscribe to the channel. And if you're feeling extra feisty and you want access to hidden content here on the channel, you can click that join button to get access to that content, which includes past debates that I've had and past live streams that I've also uploaded for channel members. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about Aizen's opponents, the 5 Kage. So when it comes to feats in the Naruto series, one of the easier ones to scale some top tier characters to are some of the Bijou feats, because they range anywhere from being, you know, mountain level to island level, and some of the higher end feats, like say with Gyuki and Kurama, they actually have a small country level feat. And before anybody mentions the multi-continental calc for the Bijou, do keep in mind the guy that actually did the calc admitted that he did the calc wrong. So probably the best we're going to get for scaling these characters above the Bijou is going to be about small country level. Or if you really do want to highball it and say that they somehow scaled a Kurama, a full power Kurama mind you, then at least Kurama is said to have been able to turn the world to ash, which would be a life-wiping feat or multi-continental. But we'll get into that being more of a high-end later on in the video. So the first question we gotta ask ourselves is, do the 5 Kage scale to the Bijou? And that's a pretty easy yes. I mean, not only from a lore perspective are the Kage supposed to be the ones that keep the Bijou and their Jinchuriki under wraps in their village, that's not always the case, right? Because there are some rare exceptions where the Kage actually isn't the strongest person in their village. But if we look at all of the 5 Kage, they all have pretty decent showings that should put them at that Bijou level. I mean, starting off with A, the Raikage, for the longest time, he was considered to be more powerful than his quote-unquote brother, Killer B. And the reason this is important is that if A is stronger than Killer B, and Killer B's own method of subjugating the Eight Tails was literally just going to the Waterfall of Truth and beating it up, that does mean that the Raikage should be stronger than the Eight Tails and thus, you know, scales to the Bijou. Keep in mind that he also fought MS Sasuke, who does have that really odd databook statement of being the strongest member of the Akatsuki. You can take that or leave that if you want, because no matter how you dice the fight between A and Sasuke, they were at least going to trade each other's lives. A is blitzing around and cracking Sasuke Susanoo, and the only thing keeping him in the fight was the fact that he could just use Amaterasu to force trades with A. If he didn't have that, he would have gotten washed. And keep in mind that a Sasuke at the end of the 5 Kage Summit arc, you know, who is fatigued, is literally blind, is still able to scrap with base Naruto. The same base Naruto that was capable of killing Kakazu and was capable of scrapping with Tendo Pain. And if you want to use the Storm games, which might sound a little bit silly, but Kishimoto actually does work with the developers of the Storm games, so you can view them as accurate canon extrapolations of certain events, because they do take some fights and they actually drag them out to make them look more impressive. So instead of the manga it just being like Sasuke and Naruto being like, hey man, come back to the village, and Sasuke's like, nah, instead they have a crazy cracked out fight where they are portrayed to be pretty even. So you have Raikage scaling above a base Naruto, who's able to take out members of the Akatsuki. Keep in mind that the members of the Akatsuki are expected to be able to take out Bijou, and Kakazu and Hidan did take out the Two Tails Maratabi. There's also the fact that A is portrayed to be a rival to Tsunade, who is also going absolute ham crazy against Madara and all of his wood clones. And this is where I say it's debatable that if you want to scale them to the Nine Tails, you can maybe use this as a highball, because Madara is still capable of subduing the Nine Tails, but he is an Edo, so I know some people are a little iffy as to whether or not he should still be able to to beat the Nine Tails. I don't think it would really be a problem because he's still capable of swapping hands with Edo Hashirama, who can put down the Ten Tails. At least with the Heavenly Gates, he's able to pin it down. And again, Tsunade absolutely goes ham crazy against Madara and all of his wood clone. Gaara also has some pretty blatant scaling, being able to beat his father Rasa, who is constantly having to put Shukaku down every time he like spurgs out and like freaks out in the village. So Gaara being able to beat a guy who consistently beats Shukaku, pretty easy Bijou scaling. And then Inoki's also seen as like one of the only threats to Madara. Like Madara literally singles him out and he's like, dude, I have to get rid of Inoki, otherwise the other Kage aren't going to fall. Inoki also scraps with Deidara for a little bit, and Deidara like blew up the Three Tails pretty casually. And I think that's all of the Kage. I don't think I'm missing any of them. There could be one Kage member I'm forgetting. They're probably not all that important. With that being said, let's go ahead and move over to Aizen's AP and see how they compare. Now, Fate Karakura Town Aizen, you might not think has like numerous different tiers that it could be scaled to, but there are quite a few ways to scale Fate Karakura Town Aizen. Again, it's pretty blatant because he says that he surpasses all of the Espada, so then it's just more of a matter of how strong do you think the Espada are. Because 4 and above have the power to destroy Las Noches by literally flexing, and all of them have the power to destroy Las Noches with a Gran Rey Cero. Now, we know Las Noches is about the size of a small country, so it's really, do you think it's like small country level because they can just blow this up, or do you think it's going to apply vaporization, which actually makes it more along the lines of multi-continental? I think it's pretty obvious that they do vaporize these attacks. I mean, if you look at what Ceros do to things when they come into contact with them, again, probably the best case you could use is Grimmjow vaporizing Melanie's top half, and there's literally nothing left there after he's done with her. There's also some shots where you look at Lanza del Relampago, after it hits the ground, it like vaporizes the sand that was there. So you could say small country level for destroying Las Noches, but we have evidence of these characters being able to vaporize things with their attacks, so you kind of have to ignore all of that to just downplay Aizen to small country level. But thankfully, Aizen has his own feats. See, Aizen is actually said to have created a star inside of Las Noches, or more specifically a sun, which is more of a small dwarf star. But while people might be skeptical as to whether or not, like, how big the sun is, you know, can we actually scale this? Well, yeah, he actually just created the thing, so that would be an AP feat for Aizen. And them saying that it's actually a sun is in reference to our own sun, and so we could use the logical assumption that that actually would mean that it's about the same size as our actual sun. The only thing that might be a bit dubious is the method Aizen used to create it, because we don't know if he just snapped his fingers and created it, or if he used some weird technology to put the sun in the sky. But regardless, he did have that statement of him creating it. So the range for Aizen would be like multi-continental to small star level if you want to buy into him creating the sun. Now we have speed for the 5 Kage, and unfortunately they don't really get access to a lot of very good speed feats, because say we have like Haku, right? Haku is stated to be the speed of light, but there's no connection to any of the 5 Kage, because what, he fights Kakashi, but that's War Art Kakashi, who's debatably way stronger than the 5 Kage. He's out there fighting Obito and all these Bijou that are being controlled by Obito, and then he goes on to fight Obito one-on-one, and whether or not you think Obito was holding back or not, it's still very impressive. You can argue for like inverse, like, oh, well, he was holding back a little bit, but he still does have to scrap with Obito. So he's debatably way higher than all of the Kage. Then Darui's Laser Circus, that's stated to be the speed of light, but it just obliterates everybody that it comes into contact with. And you would have to say like, well, we can assume that A is faster than the Laser Circus, right? It's like, no, not until they say he moves faster than it, or we see him dodging it, or we see people weaving around it. No, we're not just going to assume that. Which I can already see the comments now being like, oh, he said we can logically assume that Aizen is star level because of a statement. That's not what I said, alright? Don't misinterpret my words. I was saying if you're going to scale him to star level, then it would only be like the size of the sun, because they blatantly say sun. It's a bit different than nobody reacting to Darui's Laser Circus and trying to connect it to the Raikage just because he's the Raikage's right-hand man. Then there's a databook statement which says that B and A approach the speed of light when they use the Lariat, which I'm totally fine even saying that they're at the speed of light. I don't have any problem with that. It's just then at that point it's like, what are the multipliers for the lightning cloak? Because then we can actually get some pretty impressive speeds. But unfortunately, he doesn't use it next to like any curse mark users or any sage mode users, because if you didn't know, those are like some blatant multipliers in Naruto. The worst curse marks are stated to be a 10 times amp, and then sage mode is way greater than that, because the curse marks are basically just sucky sage mode. But unfortunately, we don't really have anything to compare it to actually extrapolate what the multiplier would be. Does it make A 10 times faster, 100 times faster, 1,000 times faster? We have no idea. There's some really scuffed scaling you could do to make them seem pretty impressive, because there is a calc that shows that the Raikage is 72 times slower than KCM Naruto at his maximum output. So then, if you wanted to do some weird circular scaling and say that, well, Madara is able to react to KCM2 Naruto, and yet all of the Kage are able to kind of throw hands with Madara, that would mean they're able to scrap with someone who's 72 times faster than the Raikage, who's already the speed of light. But again, it's kind of weird because the Raikage got blitzed by a slower and weaker version of that same Naruto. But I mean, we can just give it to him, right? We can just be nice to the 5 Kage. Let's just be nice to them, and let's just give them that, because otherwise they're going to be like the speed of light, and that's not very good. Because conversely, there are other calcs that show that same feat, and they're like, okay, KCM Naruto is like the speed of light. I'm like, well, thanks. That doesn't really help them out very much in this fight. So we'll just go with them all being 72 times the speed of light, because I'm feeling like a very generous person today. Now for Bleach, thankfully we do actually have a decent amount of like light speed calcs, but probably the most blatant one we could actually use is the calc where Shunsui is able to dodge Stark's gun point blank. Again, he's able to dodge a Sero point blank, and it comes out to him being 75 times the speed of light, which isn't too much faster than the 5 Kage, right? But then you gotta remember that Aizen is vastly above all of the Espada and all of the Gote 13, and that we're really highballing the 5 Kage speed. But you know what? This kind of gets them relative in the same ballpark. We can go with this, because this way I'm not going to get any comments about, you know, calc stacking for the light speed stuff, and it doesn't seem too crazy. And again, I'm feeling very generous today. But what about the 5 Kage's abilities? Surely they're bringing some very powerful abilities to the table, and they're really going to pressure and fight Aizen. Well, their abilities actually aren't all that bad. Now, the Raikage is just kind of a big beat stick, who cares about him? Tsunade has insane regeneration. I mean, she was literally getting torn apart by Madara. It was just face tanking through everything, so her regen is very crazy. And then let's also not forget that she can summon Katsuyu, who is able to repair her body after she was ripped in half. Katsuyu can also relay information across the entire battlefield like she did with Naruto and basically during the entire Pain Invasion, right? She also has this acid that could like disintegrate Orochimaru, so it's not like fodder acid. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna throw a battery acid at you. It's pretty potent stuff. Inoki basically has the one-shot move with his particle style, so if he catches anybody in that, they basically just get vaporized and they die immediately. He also can increase the speed of his allies with the lightweight boulder jutsu, or make things heavier with a heavier boulder jutsu. Mei can actually be useful here because her abilities, namely the steam she uses on Sasuke, were capable of dissolving his Susanoo, and they do cover a pretty wide range. Now this would be detrimental in a team battle, but people like Gaara, A, and Inoki can fly around. Tsunade's the only one that's going to be kind of screwed by that ability, but I guess she could just get floated around by Inoki or something. And then speaking of Gaara, he has very powerful sealing that in conjunction with some of the other 5 Kage was able to almost catch Edo Madara and seal him away. So again, his sealing is not bad, and their abilities aren't trash either. They do have good stuff to bring to the table, but then we look over at Aizen's abilities. Because Aizen is out here bringing the thunder. I mean, let's just talk about the main ability, Kyoka Suigetsu. That is the ability to manipulate all 5 senses and put the targets under a perfect hypnosis that they don't even recognize that they're under. In fact, it's so flawless that you can believe that you're fighting someone that you're not actually fighting, as he substituted himself for Momo, and all of the captains were like, yeah, this seems pretty fine to me. This seems perfectly acceptable. There's also the fact that Aizen is a Kido god with things like Kurot Hitsugi, that is this massive gravity well that distorts time and space. You have things like High-End that erase the existence of the target. You have the Nape Kido that actually protects Aizen from sneak attacks. You have Bakudos like Ruru Jakoro, which are capable of completely immobilizing the target. Danku, which can block any Kido from the 90s and below, or anything that is even Kido-like as well, so, you know, like energy projectiles and attacks, you know, that might come in handy later. Then there's also the Kido that Aizen uses in the past arc, where he literally just sits in, like, a different dimension and Shinji has to pull him out of it. And then, God forbid, we give him the Hogyoku, which gives him adaptive evolution, immortality, all sorts of crazy things. But I mean, let's just, to be fair, I'm not going to give Aizen the Hogyoku, and in Madara's video, I'm not giving him 6 paths, because then why am I even doing these videos in the first? But I guess let's just go ahead and talk about how this fight would go down. Now, if you were sitting in your chair and you unironically thought the 5 Kage stood any sort of chance against Aizen, you're very, very hopeful, and you might just be stupidly optimistic. And that's honestly a bit admirable, but not in this situation. Because not only is Aizen much stronger than the 5 Kage, with his range being at base multi-continental to at highest star level, and them, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt to get them up to multi-continental, saying that they scale to the full power of the Nine Tails, when most of the Kage kinda trash, scaling to like lower end Bijou characters that you might even be able to argue are only like island level, but I'm trying to be nice and I'm saying they scale to like KCM, Naruto, and Gyuki's attack that was calculated being small country level, still vastly weaker, literally millions of times weaker than a multi-continental character. Again, people really don't understand how massive the gaps in these tiers are. Then we have speed, which they should be like a few times the speed of light on being super nice, and saying that they're 72 times, and they all scale to that. When at the end of the day, they're still slower than a low-balled Aizen, who I'm scaling to the exact same speed of Shunsui and Stark, when Aizen is literally so much superior in terms of speed, power, abilities to the Espada and the Gote 13, that he not only said, the Espada's powers combined are inferior to mine, and then he mopped up the Gote 13, who were considered to be stronger than the Espada, because, well, they beat all of them, right? Then we have abilities, and while there are some neat things in there, like Tsunadi's regeneration, Gaara having a sealing ability, and Mei's little toxic steam that she can put out, it's just not competing with Aizen having, like, ultimate hypnosis with Kyoka Suigetsu, and literally all of the jutsus he could ever want with like 400 million Kitos at his disposal. It just doesn't seem like it's even remotely fair. And then also tack on things like Aizen may potentially be invisible to these characters if they don't have a high enough level of astral awareness, and he's also going to be hitting their soul directly with every attack he does, on top of being physically stronger than them and faster than they are. So even if you wanted to make some weird argument to be like, I don't think Kyoka Suigetsu would affect these characters, and it's like, well, then he'll just beat the dog out of them. So yeah, pretty conclusive victory in Aizen's favor. But you know what, if you think the 5 Kage stand a chance, we have a Discord down below. You're more than free to come in there and, you know, kind of scrap with some people. Scrap with me if you can catch me. You know, I'm kind of weaseling around in the Discord, but you know, you'll probably find me. I'm sure I'll just have Hub and some weird thing attached to it. So you find a guy named Hub, it's probably me. You know, I'll scrap you on it, you know, time permitting. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I hope you guys are looking forward to the next video. You know, the Bleach fans are really having their hurrah right now, but they're probably not going to be feeling that same way in about, I don't know, maybe 1 to 2 days when the Madara vs. Gote 13 video drops. So I'll see you guys for that. Catch you on the next video. Have yourselves a nice day.